Hey guys, what's happening? So we're jumping back into the new Blade series, where like we saw, Doctor Strange has now stepped in, but as it would seem, there are limitations to how close the Sorcerer Supreme is willing to be involved. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications, so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so when we come back, we pick up from not long after Doctor Strange made his way to Japan to speak to Blade about him recently starting the end of the world. And right off the bat, Doctor Strange is ready to get down to business by just focusing on the solution. Because like we saw, Blade was already preparing to go after Hamilton Achilles, who's this super rich and evil collector that lives on a train with an adamantium chassis that rarely slows down below 180 miles per hour. And even though prior to this point we already got the rundown about Hamilton Achilles, at least in a general sense, back when Tulip told Blade everything that she knew according to her sources, you know, with her being an occult arms dealer and everything, but even still, Tulip wasn't completely certain about the specifics surrounding Achilles. But this time around with Doctor Strange sharing the deets, not only is he completely certain about his information, but he can also confirm that Lucifer's sword is on this train. And to take it a step further, Doctor Strange can get them on the train. Cause again, from the moment he got here, Strange has been in solution mode, and there's a little bit more to it that we'll talk about in a moment. But first, because Strange has just hopped into the heist details, if you will, Blade takes a moment to introduce Tulip and Rintrah, or at least try to. Only for Strange to cut him off and just run down their character bio real quick. Cause Doctor Strange already knows who they are, which is really not that far-fetched of a thing because he's the Sorcerer Supreme, and it's literally his job to be aware of the occult world, even if he's not always stepping in to each and every conflict. But when this happens, it's funny how even though we're familiar with both Tulip and Rintrah, Doctor Strange yet again takes it a step further, cause he mentions that there's a bit of sexual tension between Tulip and Blade, which is very true. But in addition to that, he also tells them that Rintrah admires Blade in a misguided near parental way, which is something that I really hadn't thought about up to this point, cause now it's possible that Rintrah might become like a second daughter to Blade. But again, Doctor Strange is sharing these details because these are things that he already knew. And from the looks of it, the three of them have already sized up each other's dynamics, so even without them talking to each other about these things, for the most part, they've already noticed the dynamics between each other. And even though Strange just got here, he's already aware of all of this, because he's the Sorcerer Supreme and that's his job. But even still, like we talked about in the return of Doctor Strange, there are some things that do get past him, so it's not like he never misses anything. But for the amount that he does keep up with, it's impressive. And so next, when Blade goes on to ask Strange if there's any additional information that he could give him on Hamilton Achilles, to more or less let Blade know what exactly he's walking into, Strange tells him that he's going into a situation that he's quite familiar with, because Hamilton Achilles is more than just an arms dealer with a crazy obsession for personal safety, but he is also a vampire, which for Blade, hearing this just has him like, oh, goody. And Doctor Strange tells him, I thought you'd be pleased to hear that. Another opportunity to act out your childhood trauma, which to be honest, coming from Doctor Strange is a really crass way to put things. So Blade calls him out on it, telling him that he's a bit more grumpy today than usual, which is true, because since Strange has gotten here, he's been quite upset about Blade releasing the Adana. And it doesn't help that just recently in Romania, the Adana slaughtered a group of sorcerers who were under the charge of Doctor Strange. So to him, not only is this fresh because it literally just happened, but also these guys were woefully outmatched, and they went up against the Adana, who was expecting to go against Doctor Strange, and they all were killed, slowly and painfully. And this is the reason why Doctor Strange has been feeling some type of way towards Blade from the moment we saw him arrive here in Japan. So Blade reminds him that he didn't set free the Adana intentionally. And Doctor Strange is more or less like, oh, it was a mistake. My apologies, where were my manners? Which to me, that just feels like Strange going back to his usual levels of sarcasm. So from here, he opens a doorway for Blade, Tulip, and Rintrah to make their way onto the train, so they can take Lucifer's sword and use it to stop the Adana. And Doctor Strange even makes sure to send the three of them to a part of the train that is the least occupied, so when they get there, there's only one guard who turns around and sees them at the last minute, so Blade just cuts this dude in half before he can even get off a shot. And from here, Blade tells them that he's going to move forward on the train to go after Hamilton Achilles and get Lucifer's sword, while the two of them make their way to the rear, because Dr. Strange also mentioned that there are prisoners on this train, so they need to get them out of here. And going forward, as we follow Blade, we're given a very modern signature Blade moment, because in the next card ahead, there's a ton of vampires, and Blade's just like, fellas, all I want to do is kill your boss and take his stuff. You boys got a problem with that? And these vampires just hiss and snarl before they just rush at him. So Blade just smirks and he's like, good, just before he slices all these vampires into pieces. And for me, it's moments like this that just remind me about how much the character of Blade has changed ever since the first Blade film with Wesley Snipes back in '98. Because I remember when I heard that movie was coming, and I think at the time I read it in like Wizard magazine or something, but I remember my reaction just being like, Blade? The dude from the Night Stalkers? Because in the 90s, most of the comics I had were X-Men, much like any other kid. And back then, prior to the internet being what it is today, most of what I learned outside of X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk, and a couple of Secret Wars issues that I had came from talking to friends, reading Wizard magazine, or collecting trading cards. So back then, everything I knew about Blade was from reading the back of trading cards, because nobody else I knew was checking for Blade prior to that movie. And in my experience, that changed drastically after. But enough of the rant, back to the story. Because right now, as Blade is making his way forward on the train, he hears Hamilton Achilles on the intercom, telling him that the Adana has spoken to him, and she told Achilles ahead of time that Blade would come. So going forward, he opens the way for Blade to approach and speak to him face to face. But for a moment here, we go back to Tulip and Rintrah, who've made their way to the rear of the train to free the prisoners who were pretty much food, locked away waiting to be eaten by Hamilton Achilles and his staff. And it's not until now where Tulip realizes that all of these goons are vampires. And it has Tulip more or less saying that, hey, Dr. Strange failed to mention that all of these guys were vampires. And in Rintrah's case, she more or less assumed as much when Strange first told them about Achilles. So Tulip makes the adjustment. But when we go back over to Blade, who's explaining to Achilles that he's come to borrow something that he's never going to give back, which is a polite way of saying that he's come here to steal Lucifer's sword, Lightbringer. But for Achilles, who's been instructed by the Adana to anticipate Blade's arrival, he didn't know until now what specifically Blade was after. And now that he does, he tells Blade that this sword is going to change him. And that's all part of the Adana's plan. But also for Achilles, with him just finding this out, he's not quite ready to part with one of the rarest artifacts in his collection. So for that reason, he doesn't let it go without a fight. And while they're here fighting, the Adana is talking to Achilles right now. And just like we were told by Tanaka in issue 1, Blade's not able to hear her because he's a half-blood. So right now, as the Adana is talking to Achilles, he tells Blade that her voice sounds like music, and it's really one of those things where her influence is so strong on Achilles that she instructs him to delete himself. So he does it right away without hesitation. Because again, the Adana doesn't want Achilles getting in the way. She wants Blade to take this sword. And as soon as Achilles is gone, Dr. Strange shows up, telling Blade that this is wrong and to give him the sword. But Blade refuses to, because from what he knows, this is the only way to stop the Adana. So Strange tells him that he saw what's coming, and it's something that neither of them want to happen, which in a way just lets us know that Dr. Strange is aware of quite a bit more than what he's sharing. And he even admits in a way that he's being very intentional as far as the ways that he's able to actually help Blade. But right now, his Blade is just saying that he can handle it over and over until he drops to his knees. Strange lets him know that's the pride speaking, because the Lightbringer's the sword of Lucifer himself, and though it's immensely powerful, whoever wields it, they inherit Lucifer's pride as well. But going forward, Dr. Strange doesn't press the issue. He doesn't try to take the sword away from Blade, but instead he just tells Blade, I have seen my path. I cannot help you face her. It will be my role to stop what the Adana is about to do. Your friends and the innocents have been sent to safety. Leave this train to me. And when you feel that pride inside of you, like snow falling over your reason and judgment, just know that Lucifer, the morning star, was a bastion of pride. Now you have his sword, and pride goeth before the fall. Which again is Dr. Strange being cryptic and also very intentional about the limitations of his involvement here. But even still, with that being the case, you can tell that he's still doing what he believes to be his part to help Blade in the larger picture. But unfortunately, there are parts of the Adana's plan that even Dr. Strange isn't able to see, because now as Blade, Tulip, and Rintrah make their way to the Adana, it just so happens that the sword Blade brought with him, the Lightbringer, is the same shape as the key that the Adana needs to open a gateway that'll release the primordial wave. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.